Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Conversations with Agapè. I'm joined by Daniel West, Family Life Director from the Archdiocese of Atlanta, as he shares his insights on learning to love the crosses in marriage. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to turn
Okay.
off my video. I will turn it back on towards the end of today's session. But again, thank you for being here, and we're so honored to have you join us today.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So thank you, Ashley, again. Honored to do this. So I just want to share a few thoughts that I have regarding marriage. So the title is, sorry, here we go. The title is Learning the Joys of Marriage and Utilizing Them to Help Us Grow in Intimacy ultimately. And I just have some thoughts that I thought for our small time together, we could just have an encouragement with probably the hardest thing of our faith. It's the cross, right? So a little bit about me. I've been married for 20 years. I've been blessed with 8 children. I've been at my job for 12 years. Before that, I was in youth ministry. And some people have joked that I must have missed youth ministry so much that I created my own youth group. Yes, I did, and it's a great blessing. I like to call them my tribe, my little tribe at home. Um, but yeah, like most things in life, there's joys, there's crosses, and marriage is no exception to that reality. And marriage is also one of those things that the more you're in it, you realize, you don't have full control over it. Um, you don't have, the more you love and the more you live, you realize the less control you have over things in life, right? Whether they're big things like the church that we love so much, where we can't control what your bishop or pope is doing, or who's elected, right? That's coming up. We pray it's a holy man of God, but we have no control over it, right? But even more personal things, even in your life that directly affect you, like your spouse, um, you have no control over how your spouse reacts to how you handle things, how your children will react to things. You raise them as best as you can, but really you don't have control, and that lack of control scares us as humans, right? It's a cross, right? And the more you love, the more you let go. And we see that with the immense freedom God gives all of us. He loves us so much, he has less and less control over us. We have complete freedom, even to reject him, as painful as that is. But the truth is, you know, God calls us to love, right? It's a painful truth at times, but it's the truth that we have to accept. And when it's difficult, we unite our crosses with the Lord, with Christ, and offer them back to the Father, like He did in His life here on earth. But in our fallen state, when we don't include God in our love with our relationships, what do we prioritize? We try to minimize that cross naturally, and we want to prioritize the control, which pleases us and comforts us, right? Not that pleasure and comfort are intrinsically bad, but they are bad when we make them our number one priority, right? When we say, "My will be done," above whatever God's will is. Right? So that's all of our temptation, is to have more and more control over our lives and to minimize the cross. And we've all been there with our spouse. We all want our spouse to love us a certain way, um, and sometimes that's can be a selfish desire, or sometimes it's a righteous desire, and there's a whole host of discernment that has to come into the reality there. Um, Marriage is a wonderful place where God has put us in to constantly discern, right, all of our desires. Sometimes they lead towards building God's kingdom. Sometimes they're building our own desires apart from God and not His kingdom. But all of these, in all of these situations, we encounter the cross, right? Whether we have a legitimate desire that's not met, right? We do what we can to fix it, but at the end of the day, we can't force our spouse um, to treat us a certain way, right? We have to accept that cross. Or our spouse is a broken person like we are, right? Sometimes um, they will have their own desires that might not fully conform to God, and that's a cross as well. Um, so the cross is everywhere in marriage. It's not new. It's not news to anyone listening, I'm sure. But it's a process, right? It's a process to try to accept, right? Because this is where our heart changes, right? So in our brokenness, our hearts desire everything that's easy, fast, fun, cheap, but we realize with maturity that this is empty. Um, with God, as we grow in love, we want what's true, long lasting, joyful, and valuable because it's fulfilling, right? Even if it's uncomfortable or painful, we want the true things, the valuable things, fulfilling things, because that's where the joy is. Um, and being in marriage prep ministry, uh, you know, in marriage preparation, you come across all kinds of people. And I have found in 10 plus years of ministry that this is probably the the I think the most logical argument for Christianity is the value and the reality of the cross, um, because no matter if you are an atheist, agnostic, Protestant, or just go to mass on Christmas and Easter, or you're steeped in sin, we all know that we get higher goods in life by sacrificing lower goods. We all know this to be true. And so I highlight this to my couples in marriage ministry, right? Whether they're engaged um, or married and want enrichment. Uh, I try to tap into this reality that we all, whether we've earned a degree or played an instrument or gotten financially in a better spot or physically healthier or restored a relationship with a friend, we know we had to give up something to obtain that. So in a lot of these examples, what do we give up? We give up time. We give up money. We give up our personal preference for a certain food or a certain item that we really don't need to purchase, right? Or maybe we got in an argument, we feel wronged by an old friend, but maybe we have to swallow our pride, right? Maybe we have to push ourselves to be friendly when we don't feel like it, or approach a difficult conversation. We all have to sacrifice something to obtain a greater thing. And of course, the cross and resurrection makes sense because it is the epitome of this, right? So, of course, Christianity makes sense. This is how we are saved. Right? And in my experiences, this point right here will help couples, people just come to the realization of the necessity of the difficult, right? Um, and this leads me to my last slide about marital intimacy, right? So if it's true just about in every other area that we have to give up something to obtain something greater, why wouldn't it be true in marital intimacy, in your relationship with your spouse, and also your relationship with God, right? Which have so many parallels. Um, and I have a picture of a rose here. You might be wondering why. And I liken marital intimacy with a rose plant, right? So, for example, when I say the word intimacy, what first word might come to your mind? Naturally, it's sexual intimacy, right? Because marriage is the place God has ordained for sexual intimacy to be present, right? But just like in a rose plant, sometimes there's a rose and sometimes there's not, but the plant still continues, right? So same thing in a marriage. Sometimes there's sexual intimacy, but there's periods that it is not there, right? But the plant still goes on. And also, the second point is that for that rose to flower and bloom and be healthy, there's a whole ecosystem, if you will, all kinds of parts to the plant that have to be present for there to be the rose, right? So, in similar way, in intimacy, for there to be healthy sexual intimacy, there has to be healthy non-sexual intimacy. And I like to tell my couples that the spiritual intimacy is the foundation, right? You know, the parable of the seeds, Christ says, it all kind of depends on what kind of ground you have. What is your foundation? If God's your foundation, you're going to have healthy soil and things are going to go well. If God is not your foundation, it's only a matter of time before things don't last and wither away. So, spiritual intimacy, you know, God has a design for marriage. You have to sacrifice your pride, understand that you're not the designer of marriage and love. So you need to obey certain rules and realities with spiritual intimacy and intimacy in general, right? You have to take time to pray, learn church teaching, read scripture, and you know, again, sacrificing those lower goods of time and pride to get higher goods, right? Of spiritual intimacy with God and your spouse. Trust, emotional intimacy, maybe those are the stems of the plant that hold it up. You know, we're called to be return to be naked without shame, like Genesis says in the beginning, where we have total trust with our spouse and share everything, um, share, you know, our house, our finances, our children, our feelings, our hopes and dreams and fears, everything. Um, in this special relationship of being one flesh with somebody. Crisis intimacies might be like the thorns on the plant. They're unavoidable. You will have crises in your life. If you're married, um, you know, for decades, you will have them in your marriage. Um, you know, one personal example is when my son, he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. It was a crisis in our marriage. Had to run to the hospital. Our world was turned upside down. You know, a lot of blood sugar checks and changing diet and insulin shots, and yeah, it was a crisis and it was a temptation. You know, you have a choice. Do you blame your spouse for the things going wrong in your life and this new crisis that's adding difficulty in your life, or do you lean on each other, right? Because you know the thorns on the plant, they hurt, but they also protect the plant. So it's an opportunity to grow in your love, right? This is why ultimately God allows the crosses and the difficulties, is to grow in our love. Intellectual intimacy, maybe that's like the buds before the flowers. Hopefully, you have a relationship, a deep friendship, both with God and your spouse, right? You just like you talk to your spouse, hopefully as a best friend, you talk to God as a best friend. You have a relationship, and that's very important to keep up on an ongoing basis. Recreational intimacy, kind of have that maybe like the sucker of the plant. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, but it's an intimacy, and there's sacrifices there as well. You know, if things don't go as planned on a vacation, you know, you have to, yeah, keep your cool and not be an angry person. And when you're playing games, you got to learn to lose well and be joyful in recreation and in all ways. And so, if all of these intimacies are working well together in a marriage, sexual intimacy will blossom, right? It will be healthy, and the times, not that it'll be perfect, right? Nothing this side of heaven is perfect, but you will be able to discuss it with your with your spouse. I can't tell you how many times working in marriage ministry I come across something to the effect of, whether written or I hear somebody speak, that the couple, they can't talk about sexual intimacy. And on one sense, it's surprising because it's like, wow, such an intimate relationship, that's such a important part of marriage. How are you not able to talk about it? But on the other sense, you realize that if you're not cultivating all the other intimacies, then naturally, you will not be able to share that very intimate part about yourself. So it becomes a struggle between men and women, especially, and I have to put in a plug for natural family planning. If you're feeling called to space children, not that NFP fixes everything, but it helps put couples on the same page, right? Where something like contraception and sterilization, which is like the air we breathe, right, in our culture, it totally takes this picture and flips it upside down, right? It makes sexual intimacy the focus, kind of blocks out all the other intimacies, and there's almost a surprise when it dies, right? Well, with us, with eyes of faith, we realize, well, no, you have to accept the crosses of all the other intimacies, right, from the ground up, and all the crosses, big and small, for there to be a healthy sexual intimacy, and not be surprised when it's not there, right? Like I mentioned, sometimes the plant doesn't flower. Like same thing within with your intimacy with your spouse, you're not able to engage, or even thinking about our greatest models, our greatest saints, Mother Mary and Saint Joseph. They did not have sexual intimacy ever in their marriage. And someone might think, were they married? Were they intimate? The answer is absolutely yes, right? They had. It's feasible to think they were so intimate in all the non-sexual intimacies that they are like the model for us to learn about marital intimacy as on the non-sexual intimacy aspect of marital intimacy. We have a lot to learn from their marriage. Um, so yeah, so all this to say, the encouragement, this needs to be talked about more. Unfortunately, there's a lot of silence with the church on intimacy. I know that, in the contraceptive culture, post-sexual revolutionized world we live in, it's kind of taboo. There's a lot of shame because a lot of us have sexual sins, sexual baggage. But the more you live, try to live anyway, try to live healthy marital intimacy, sexual intimacy as God has designed, you really realize the beauty of this. And, there is no shame. God created it. And as long as we put God's plan first, I think that is key, right? Our desires are not bad. Sexuality is not bad, of course. God designed it. as long as we put God and his design first. And when we do that, everything else falls into place, right? Because all Satan does is he messes up God's design, right? He takes an eraser and distorts things. But we need to just keep things in God's order. And the more we do this, the more we can appreciate God's plan in our lives, God's plan for marriage, whatever God allows in our marriage, our crosses that we can't change, right? We can turn that into a beautiful prayer. And it's then you're just on the road to happiness, to greater acceptance, greater conformity with Christ. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So hopefully that was an encouragement with the most difficult part of our Christian faith, the cross. You know, I want to encourage any married person out there who might be listening to persevere. There's crosses tailored to our each individual lives, and but God wants us to persevere because that's not the last word. You know, God doesn't want us to suffer just for suffering's sake. God allows it so that there's a more beautiful resurrection behind that cross. So anyone suffering any cross, I ask Mother Mary, Saint Joseph, our model marital couple, married couple, to intercede for us and to help us grow in our love with our spouse. So may God bless you.
Thank you, Daniel. And as
Thank
you
you.
said, for such a taboo topic, you explained that in a very beautiful way. So I really appreciate your time and your effort and your insights on your topic today. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you,
And
Ashley.
yeah, someone wants to continue the conversation with you. How do they contact you? How do they reach Daniel?
Yeah, but my work email address is the best. DWest, as in D as in Daniel, West as in my last name,
Awesome.
um, at archatl.com. Like
Very good.
Arch, like Archdiocese of Atlanta, ATL.com.
Great. And I will share it in the follow-up with everyone, a follow-up email with everyone too on your email address and the Family Life page. And so they can continue conversation if needed. But again, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you everyone for watching the new webisode for Conversations with Agapè. We are so honored to have you, Daniel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. God bless you.
Thank you.
Take care.